Welcome along to this edition of They Once Raced Here. Chris Ganly, welcome to you. And we're standing in front of a pretty common sign that says Racecourse Road. But for you, this sign's actually quite special.
It is, Ed. So there's a lot of these. You see a lot of these signs around, and I'm yet to find one that didn't actually lead into a racecourse. I'd been to lunch in Dalesford with my wife. We were heading back down the road to Geelong, and I saw this sign. And it occurred to me, I don't remember them racing in Ballan. And that's kind of it. That kind of began my passion, my problem, my issue, whatever it is.
I think passion.
Passion. That's what started all of this, right? So it was that one sign, or this sign, started me off on the journey of tracking down that, what will be 1,000 courses, So 3 books into the series, another one will come out probably early next year, and one beyond that. Yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Well, the good news is that journey's not over. We've got another one to make today. Let's go and show you where they once raced, right here at Ballan. So we've made our way to the track itself here at Ballan, which does have a long, lengthy history, Chris, dating back to the mid-1800s.
It does, Ed, and it's quite contemporary with a number of the other ones we've seen. So very similar sort of age to Newstead and a few others out here in the country. Early 1860s, they started racing here, and a nice place, nice location, and a big race course here. Nice distance around, so pretty common, and a nice wide racetrack. This one's a little bit wider, some of the others. The map from the 1930s shows it to be, between 60 and 70 feet, which is decent width. So plenty of space for horses, but apparently, the middle had a lot of trees in it and they removed those. So, very good viewing track, this one.
And does go back to that foundation, really, that so many towns of various sizes had their own race course. We're in between Melbourne and Ballarat, both cities with decent courses. Ballan, they wanted their own one.
Well, they did, and they didn't want to be outdone, right? So you saw a lot of this where, the locals didn't want to be outdone. They didn't want to have to travel somewhere. They didn't want to go to Ballarat. They didn't want to go into Melbourne. So, yeah, they wanted their own race course, and so they did. They set it up. And what's also interesting, Ed, is that this is the Ballan Jockey Club, right? It's not a race club, it's a jockey club. You don't see a lot of those, but the Ballan Jockey Club's a good example of that.
What's fascinating when we do make our treks to these lost racetracks right across Victoria is looking out for what is left from their racing days when it comes to the infrastructure. So Chris, when they were racing here at Ballan, this area would have been a hive of activity. You've got the jockeys room area here, we're in the mounting yard, bookies over there, plenty going on.
Oh, absolutely. And Ed, as we've seen, right, these buildings start to look quite similar, right? You come onto these courses now and I can pick out what I'm looking at. They're all built in a similar way. Very, very usual to see something like that. And yeah, it's great. It's great to be standing here in what was the mounting yard. And we know that because it's clearly marked on the 1930 map of the course. And the finish line was, not far away there. And they probably led the horses out here just to our left out onto the track.
Now, Chris, you've done hours upon hours of research for what Ballan would have been like, but there's nothing quite like getting it first-hand from the locals when you come here. We were not 100% sure what this was behind us. We've now discovered this was the semaphore board.
It absolutely was. And not only is this a semaphore board, Ed, but the locals have actually taken us into the jockeys' rooms, into the sheds in here, and have shown us the names that used to go up on there. And what was one of those names we saw?
Roy Higgins, the legendary Roy Higgins. So the story goes, he was booked to ride at Flemington. The races were washed out there. They weren't washed out here at Ballan though, and him and a couple of other Melbourne-based jockeys rode here at Ballan. Some other famous names though on that list there.
There was Peter Bakos, there were a few others there. The other thing that's interesting, Ed, here is we've got a little bit of paraphernalia hanging on the side of the building there. Well, that's actually where the telephone line would come in, where they would send the results into Ballan and get the results to the post office, get them down into Melbourne, get the results in. A little bit different to how we do it these days.
Yep, these days it's all on your app through the internet to find out who's won and if you're collecting or if you've done your money. Back then, yep, the phone line, that was how it was done. Another key part of Ballan Racecourse that still exists are the tie-up stalls where the horses would have been saddled up before going to where we were before at the mounting yard and then heading out onto the track. We haven't raced here for over 60 years, but these look in good condition, Chris.
They are, Ed, and you don't see a lot of these. Like, we've been to other courses. We went to Newstead, there was nothing like this there, and they're a very, very similar age, right? So, yeah, you don't see a lot of these. There were 30 stalls here. You can kind of see that is still what's still in place here. So a little bit unusual, but it's great to see some of the infrastructure. It's what I love about these courses.
Chris, you and I, we've gone for a little bit of a wander before the home turn here at Ballan. We're quite wide. We're by the outside running rail, which wasn't part of the track when racing was initially held here.
No, it wasn't, Ed. So quite typically, a lot of early days, the courses, they typically only worried about the finishing straight. So they usually railed it on certainly the inside, sometimes the outside. By 1907, had a continuous rail on the inside. By 1930, they'd added the outside rail. And yes, if you're out here, Ed, I think you're lost. You'd maybe head into Dalesford if you're out here. So very typical of what we've seen, very, very similar to what we saw at Newstead, very similar sort of rail. Certainly wouldn't match up to standards today, so you can see why they've moved on. Yeah, pretty typical sort of course, nice and wide here too, plenty of space.
Yep, I think OH&S in this day and age would have a bit to say about that. The other thing that we've noticed that's still here as well, you've got some of the old distance markers, the furlong markers, given that racing was held here in the pre-metric days. So that's something we do see here at a number of tracks. Yep. What you don't often see though, a shoot start for the sprints.
You don't see a lot of them. I've seen plenty of them on maps, plenty of them, you know, being described as having a shoot. Some courses having multiples of them, as we see these days, but very unusual still to find one in existence. So yeah, no, nice to see.
Now it no longer exists, but Chris, this is where the grandstand would have been. You can see, given we're up on a hill, that race goers, if they made their way up here, would have had a decent view with plenty of elevation.
They would, Ed, and it was actually quite a large construction where we're standing, like a couple of stories high. Up above a grandstand, said to hold 400 people. That's quite large. Another one nearby, a secondary one for 50 people, but underneath it had a bar. Had to have a bar.
And that's part of going to the races.
Absolutely. It had some, you know, facilities for women. There's a women's lunchroom, quite a large structure, and quite a good spot looking out on the course and just by the finishing line here.
So this is the show called They Once Raced Here, implying obviously they don't race here anymore. And when you look at the history, post-World War II, there was conjecture about Ballan as a race course. Talks of a merger with Bacchus Marsh in the 1950s, and then racing ceased here in the 1960s.
So it did, Ed, and we've seen a lot of that, right? So very contemporary with Newstead, which is another one we visited. So closed at the same time. 1969, they were de-licensed. So yes, they chose not to merge with Bacchus Marsh. They both chose to go it alone. They both got closed at the same time. So the Ballan Jockey Club still exists, right? They still go on. Racing did move to Ballarat for a period of time, but it now takes place in Geelong, just after Melbourne Cup in every November and continues.
Incredibly, the legacy still lives on as far as the Ballan Jockey Club is concerned. What about the legacy of the old Ballan racecourse?
This course is used for a number of things, you know, we still see here today. So there's a pony club, there's an adult riders, there's vintage machinery. There's a number of things still taking place on the course here today. And we've also got the Ballan Harness Racing Club, and they've got their training track out behind us out on the course here.
So that's it as far as our look back at the history of racing here at Ballan. Now, Chris, I've been really enjoying our road trips, but for something different, a bit easier, do you reckon you could find somewhere closer to me?
Ed, we will. How about we do something in the Melbourne area, a little bit closer to home for you? Let's have a look at something in the metro area. Let's see what we can find.
I like the sound of that. I'm looking forward to uncovering that history with you, Chris. Thank you as always. Make sure you continue to watch Racing.com as we take you far and wide to locations where they once raced at.